Welcome, Trevor, to Metal Pages. It's a great pleasure to talk with you about Ashen Horde, this new album, Antimony, and more things related to the metal world. Starting with a common question: how was the band been during this? Well, during the last times, because we crossed a pandemic, then we start a war. The Europe start a war. So now you delayed. You delayed 4 years to release a new album. So how are the things going until now with?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it was weird. I mean, on one hand, Ashen Horde has always been just a studio band. Our drummer lives in Australia. Our singer lives in another state. We all live in different places. So because we're not a touring band, that part of it didn't hurt so bad. It was okay. So we've always worked remotely and done everything on our own. So that was okay. So we had, I worked on this album, and we'd mostly recorded it right before COVID happened and the lockdowns happened. It got mixed right after that happened. So that was one of the big delays. We actually had hoped to put the record out in early 2020. Didn't happen. Everything right. So the band's good. I'm just really excited that we finally are getting it out because I've it's been a long time since I wrote it, so it's like I'm ready for other people to hear it.
Okay, okay. So compared with the last war, when you last were fallen cathedrals now, and what are the biggest differences that already exist from this antimony compared to the previous record?
Right. So the biggest difference, I think, is we have a real live human drummer this time. Fallen Cathedrals was all drum programmed. I
Yeah.
think I worked hard on that, but we have an actual human playing on this. So I think that gave it a really different feel because I would write everything. Robin came in and he didn't always interpret things the same way I did. So that was really interesting, getting his drums back, and then in some cases changing the guitar parts to mimic what he played because I liked what he did. So that was cool. It's also the first one that I didn't mix. I had someone else mix it.
Mhm.
So that was cool too. So, it doesn't sound to me the same as the earlier records. From a music standpoint, I think it's kind of a logical progression. It's maybe a little bit more progressive than the last one, but it's still got plenty of blast beats and death metal stuff and all that. So, I think it's a
Mhm.
logical step from our last record.
Okay, okay. Well, talking about a lot about the history, I'm seeing now the history from the band. This is etc. That yeah, you are compose and record everything since Sanguinum Bindita and Ninth Place because
Yep.
you were compose the voice, the vocals, all. So, and what kind of motivation did you have to change this aspect and record with more members, etc.?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it's funny when I first moved to Los Angeles, that's when I started Ashen Horde. Um, I had been in bands, we'd work together, things would happen, members would leave, stuff. It was a lot to deal with. And so when I moved here, I didn't know anyone. I kind of thought, I wonder if I could do this alone. Like I can make these albums I want to make and not deal with anybody else, just me. And so that's what kind of happened. And it worked out well. The first two records, I was like, yes, I did these all by myself. But it's kind of funny, what really made me bring others in is all my years of screaming my brains out. I had to have throat surgery in 2015, and I was like, I can't do that anymore. So I have to get someone to do vocals. And so I brought Stevie into the mix to do vocals, and bringing him in really kind of made me think like this would be cool to like have all the members be actual people and different things. So that's what kind of triggered it, and then we just eventually the right people came in.
Okay. Well, yeah, yeah. Steve is entered to the band in 2016, according to the information. So,
Yep.
compared to the past and compared to now, what for you? What is the most important thing that you did with Ashen Horde since the beginning to now? You said you you start the band by yourself, you record everything, but now you are working with more people. So, but a lot of changes happened during this last album. So for
Yep.
you, what is for you is which is the main important things that you did since the beginning to now in Ashen Horde?
It's a good question. I mean, for me, it's funny. So I've been doing Ashen Horde for 10 years now, which is kind of crazy. But I think the motivation that made me want to do it in the first place is always the same. I wanted to do extreme metal that was like based in black metal, but could bring in whatever I felt like putting in there. If I wanted to put in some death metal stuff or thrash stuff or an acoustic thing, whatever I thought worked would go in. So I don't think the way I approach Ashen Horde has changed all that much over the years. I think I still write songs the way I did in the beginning. If anything, it's just, I still just want to try to write the songs that I want to hear, that I think are cool. If other people like them, that's great. So, I want to say that I think my writing has maybe improved. I think I've gotten to be a better musician, a better writer, but as far as the way I tackle the band, it's the same as when I first started it. And now I'm just fortunate to have other people that have maybe slightly different ideas about things that are cooler than what I would have thought of.
Okay. Okay. Other detail that is impossible not to ask is because about your collection there. How many CDs do you have in your collection now? Do you have the exact amount, or perhaps you stop the counting and skip off?
I did. I stopped counting at some point because I don't think my wife is happy if she actually knew the number. But I can say that it's probably close to 10,000 altogether.
10,000.
And I'm not exaggerating. I think that might even be lowballing. It's bad.
Wow. And well, according to this, what you have you have 10 CDs in your collection, 10,000 CDs from your collection. So which are the main inspirations that you have from these CDs to create Ashen Horde? Because you start as a collector, then you form the band. So
Yep.
which CDs from your collection are the main influence to create Ashen Horde?
Yeah, so let's see. If I think back to things that I consider like super influential to me as a writer, like the ones that when I heard these are like changed my life albums. When I was a kid, it was Kiss albums, everything Kiss did. That got me into this scene and everything, right? But some of the albums that really got me into like the more extreme metal. So one of the first ones was Persistence of Time by Anthrax. That one got me into thrash and kind of pushed me out, because when I was growing up, I listened to a lot more like things that I still like, Def Leppard and Rat and Bon Jovi. That's the kind of stuff. So Anthrax were the one that kind of pushed me into the heavier side. So that was a big one. Sepultura's Arise. When I first heard that, that was just like, boom, oh my God, this is so amazing. I still think that album is amazing. That was a big one. Cannibal Corpse's Vile album. I actually got into them after Chris Barnes left, but I still think Vile, I go back to that as like the first really death metal album that I absolutely loved. And that one really influenced me as a guitar player, because I was like, whoa, I've never heard anything like this, all the down-tuned and the crazy stuff. So that was a big one. Enslaved's Frost album, that was probably my first big black metal record. That was the one that got me into black metal, and that was that 90s period. So it was Enslaved, Emperor, Anthems to the Welkin at Dusk, Satyricons, Nemesis Divina, Immortals, Blizzard Beasts, all that kind of stuff. So all of this, there's a lot, but those are the records I feel like that really came in and changed my life. One more I'll throw out there, and it's not metal, but I'll explain why it makes sense. There's a British band called the Wild Hearts that I got really into in the 90s. And it's not metal, but what I love so much about their music is they don't care about what style it is. It can have a metal part and a country part and a pop part and a rock part. It's whatever's cool. Let's push it all together. So that really stuck to me. It's like, wow, you don't have to just play one thing. You can put it all, whatever you want to do in there. And so that's kind of how I try to approach my music too.
Okay. And into this aspect, do you have new bands in your collection? So are you still collecting new bands? Because it's sometimes very difficult now, because the new bands are some bands are like traditional heavy metal, like thrash metal from the old. It's the same like the 70s and 80s, and it's very difficult now to collect more CDs in these styles.
Yep, it's so hard. I've got friends who are constantly looking at new bands and showing stuff. I don't have the time. I don't have the patience. It takes a lot for a new band to stick with me. What's kind of funny is I feel like, I mean, I'm open. If I hear something new and cool, great, that's awesome. But I feel like lately I've been getting into bands that have been around for 30 years that I just never listened to. Like last year, I got really into Voivod, who have been around since 1983 or something. I never listened to them, so it's new to me, but it was exciting. But it's like, oh my gosh, I've got 15 albums I can now buy from them,
Yes.
which is cool. It's expensive, but cool. Yeah. So that seems to be happening more and more. It's bands that have been around a long time that I just never really got into.
Okay. Well, as a collector, as I see in your collection, so what is your opinion about now the digital platforms? Because the digital platforms now is the new wave to hear music, especially for this new generation. So it's sometimes for you, the digital aspect is good or is bad for as a collector as you are.
I think it's a little of both. I think it's good because it gives you a chance to get a lot more exposure, right? It was a lot harder 20, 30 years ago um, to get, like this. I'm talking to you, you're in Lima, I believe, right? And I'm in Los Angeles. Like, I would have to somehow send CDs to someone that you would find it at a store or whatever. It's a lot harder to get it out. So I love that you can get your music to everyone around the world through Bandcamp, things like that. That's great. I love that people can have access to everything. But as a collector, as someone who likes the physical copy, it's just not the same. I feel like it's a little more disposable, I guess. Like, people don't spend as much time. Like, when I would buy a new CD, I would put it on, I would sit there, I'd look at the artwork, I would listen to the whole thing. Now people like just skim things. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, and I feel like you don't get as into stuff now. So it's good and bad, but I think I don't know. It's one of those things. We can't go back, right?
Yes,
We are.
yes, we can. Okay. Well, seeing the lineup from you, well, from this last album, Igor Panasevic as the bass player. They play in a lot of bands. Then Stevie Boyser plays in a lot of bands too.
Yep.
Then Robin Stone has more than
Oh my
five
God, he's
albums.
in every band. Yeah.
They play in a lot. So how they decide to in the band with you and Stevie, because they have a lot of bands coming.
That's a good question. I don't know. I've been very lucky, I guess. With Stevie, we had some mutual friends, and I think for him it was just something very different than what he'd done in his other bands. Like Inferior, very technical death metal, Equipoise or technical proggy death metal. So I think this was something that let him do something a little bit different. I assume. I don't know. He's a good guy. I appreciate that he wanted to. Not having to tour might help too, because he's on the road a lot with Inferi. So it would have been harder if I was expecting him to go out and tour a lot. With Igor, Igor and I also have a band called Abhoria. It's a black metal band. Our first record came out last year. And he was a friend of a friend. He played in some other bands that I liked. And once he joined Abhoria and I got to work with him, I was just like, wow, he plays bass so differently than I do. He thinks about it so differently. I was like, I want to see what happens if I give him these songs and see what he does with them. And he was cool enough to say, yeah. And so here we are. And then Robin, I was just a huge fan of his playing. I absolutely love Norse. And I got to know him just via Facebook talking about Norse. And so when I started thinking about, I needed a studio drummer, I was like, I know who I'm going to. This is the guy. He's going to nail it. And yeah, and he's just an awesome guy and an amazing player.
Okay, nice. And to this aspect, when talking about the last things that you said about the drummer. So as you can see now, a lot of drummers. I think the drummers from the technical death metal, progressive death metal, or the experimental metal in general are very requesting for a lot of bands, because Robin Son playing 1, 2, 3, more than 10 bands. That's amazing.
Yep.
So if we relate this aspect, Hannes Grossman from Ex Obscura plays in a lot of bands too. So if we talk from the past, Gene Hoglan plays with Death, Testament, etc., and a lot of bands too. So what is your thoughts about the always the drummer in a metal band in general are more requested than the other members since the beginning?
It's fun. That's a great question. I don't know if on one hand, I think there aren't as many people that drum, because, like, for me, I live in an apartment in Los Angeles. I couldn't be a drummer here. My neighbors would burn me. Like, you can play guitar. So I think that's one part, right? Is drummers need a place to drum.
Yeah.
The other, though, is just, I guess, drummers are in demand. Like, when I write music and when I think about the drum parts, there are a lot of people that just can't do them. You know, based on the complexity of something, I'm like, okay, I can only think of a handful of people that could actually do this. So it's like I go to them. I'm sure there are others out there that I just don't know. Um, but yeah, no, it's a great question because I know drummers are super in demand. And when I think about like if we were going to do any shows or go tour with Ashen Horde, I don't know what I would do. I can't afford to fly Robin from Australia. So like, where would I go find someone? I don't know. I guess I'd just ask other bands and see if he can do one more.
Okay, okay. Well, as I said, we are living in a cyclic time now because
Yeah,
the new generation, I'm talking about the 35 years old or 25 years old, the years old, they now hear the music by the digital platform, Spotify, YouTube, etc., etc., and they love to do now this aspect, to just hear the music with singles, as the music was in the 40s and 50s when the
yeah,
music spread just by singles. So now what this old movement and retro movement to hear now singles. So
right.
so in relating to this aspect, which songs from this antimony are the best single to represent a whole album?
Ah, it's a great question. Yeah, it's funny. I wondered about that too. I always struggle with that because when I write music, I tend to write the album is a thing, right? They're individual songs, but it's all part of a whole. So I always have a hard time picking a single because it's like you want something that people will say, okay, if I like this, I'm probably going to write the rest of the album. But at the same time, that song maybe only shows one side of the band. So I struggle a bit. The Physician was one of the songs on this album that we had a video made for it. That one, I don't remember why exactly. I remember after Stevie recorded the vocals and he was like, dude, I think this is it. I think this is the single. This song is really cool. And it kind of had a little of everything. It's got some blast beats, it's got some like almost 80s metal stuff, it's got some instrumental bits. But I don't know. I have a hard time picking one to
Mm.
say like that song is the whole record because if you look at some of the songs, like The Barrister on this album is a little slower, more progressive. It's got some clean vocals and some different stuff. Um, and The Throes of Agony is very fast and very intense. So it's like I don't have one song that shows both sides of the band. So it's always really hard to pick. So I just have to hope that whatever we pick is enough for someone to say, oh, let me see what else they have. And then they also like that.
Mhm. Okay, then into this new album Antimony, I saw that the album has 10 songs.
Yep.
The first and the second one are like the introduction and the end song from that. But the curious thing about this album is that these old songs has the Throats of Agony, the Concert, the Barrister, the Physician, the Courtesan, the Disciple, the Neophyte. It's just one Animus Nocendi is a different aspect into talking about the name of these songs. So
Yeah.
this has a special significant or specific subject about to use the more than one
Yep.
in 8 songs you use the.
Yeah, absolutely. So the album, the story of the album, it's a concept album. There was this guy named Charles Bravo. He was a British lawyer back in the 1800s who was murdered. Well, he died. He died from antimony poisoning. That's where the name of the album comes from, antimony. And it was never solved. They never figured out what happened to him. And I was fascinated. I read a book about it and thought it would be interesting to look at all of the different people that were accused of murdering him and why might they want to kill him? What was their motivation for hating him? And so that's how the album is built. So the Throes of Agony starts, it's actually him dying. He's been poisoned, he knows it's coming, and he's kind of trying to figure out who would do this to me, why is this happening, oh my god, I'm in so much pain, right? And then the next 6 songs, each one talks about a different person that might have wanted to kill him. You've got someone he works with, you've got his ex-wife or his wife, you've got his mistress, you've got the doctor that is dating his wife. So that's where the naming, so it's like taking these people and saying, okay, here's this person, they are the physician. Why did the physician want to kill this guy in the beginning? So that's kind of how the album is laid out. And that's why they're named like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, okay. Well, you start the band as you told me, as I said, told you, as I told you, you told me by yourself, not doing drums in programming these aspects. So, but relating, and now you have full members. So, but the curious thing with this aspect is now it's not possible to do a solo project because now the artificial intelligence are more present into the arts. It's a common thing. Now you can have a better drummer, a better guitarist, a better bass player with the artificial intelligence because this artificial helps. And as you can see now, the artificial intelligence are crossing the barrier and enter to the art area because there is now exists as a software. This software you put a little descriptions in the box, and this software create art, no, for the cover arts, etc.
Yep.
So, what is your opinion about the artificial intelligence are now more present into the arts, the visual part, the sounds part, etc.?
It's a great thing. I've been talking to a lot of people about this recently because it's a big hot topic right now. And I don't know, it's interesting because on one hand, I get why people are doing it. Like if I think about it from a music lens, right? Robin's amazing. He knows how to play. He's awesome. But if I have a computer, it can play anything I can think of. It doesn't matter how complicated, how fast, it can do it. And it never gets tired. It never shows up late to band practice. It doesn't get too drunk the night before, right? That kind of stuff. So there are some aspects there that I get that are good. But like when it comes to art, it's tough because, with digital and with AI, people want things faster and they want things free. It's just like the music. When things went digital with Napster, people don't want to pay for things anymore. Having AI gives you a way to create art without paying an artist and gives you a way to have art without waiting. I've worked with painters who have done our albums. They look beautiful, but that's 2 or 3 months of work. If I want something like right now, well, now there's a computer that can do it for me. I don't have to wait and I don't have to pay them. So while I don't agree with it and I think it's hurting artists, I understand why people enjoy it. And on the other hand, I think a lot of people don't value art. They don't really understand how much work goes into it. Like, right? People just want to download a song and they want to download a song for free. But there's so much that goes into that song, hours of writing and practicing and recording and getting it just perfect the way you want it. And I think a lot of people don't think about that. It's just this disposable thing like, hey, yeah, I don't care about that, move on to the next. So, if you don't appreciate the effort that goes into it, I think it's easier to fall into that trap and be like, I'll just let a computer do it. I don't need a human.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we are very close to this interview, Trevor. And for this aspect, what are the future plans that the band has for this new Antimony? Perhaps you have new proposals to do a full tour for the first time, a full tour in US, perhaps in Europe, or who knows? Perhaps some proposals are coming from the South, from Latin America. Who knows?
If we got some good ones, so that's the thing. Again, because we all live in different places, it's hard to do just a tour. Plus, with work and everything, but I would love to play live with these guys. And I would love to do a festival show. Something like that would be amazing. Europe, South America, wherever. If we got invited to play, that would be amazing. I think because that would be a good reason for all of us to come together in one place. So right now there's nothing on the books, but we'll see what happens. If people like the record, maybe some opportunities will come up. We've already started on the next album. Like I said, this one's been sitting around for a while, so all the drums are done. I'm about halfway through guitars for the next album. We'll start working on vocals later this year, so hopefully we'll have that one sooner than 3 years, 4 years from now. Hopefully we can get it out a lot quicker, and then just keep going. I have a lot of songs that I want to write and play, and hopefully we can just keep doing this as long as people like it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, one of the last questions for this interview. Well, your first album was your first 2 albums, Sanguinium Vindicta and Nine Place, was released by Mandol Records. Then you entered with Fallen Cathedrals to extreme metal music records, and now you are with Transcending Obscurity Records. So how was the process to change the label and now entered with Transcending Obscurity Records with Kunal, one of the new labels that are that I see new bands, singing new bands like progressive, abstract, dissonant, etc. metal.
Yep. Yeah, so the first two, Mandel, that was just my personal record label. I went independent on those. Um, so Mandel, yeah, that's all it is. It's not a real thing. So when it came to Fallen Cathedrals, having done two albums, the biggest problem I faced was distribution. I didn't have, the album wasn't in stores. The album wasn't available anywhere except through my Bandcamp. And so I knew the only way to get it out would be to find a label. So I started hunting. Extreme Metal Music approached and said, yeah, we want to put out the album. And I was like, sweet, this is great. And they did. That was the first time we had our album in stores. Like I could go to a store in Hollywood and actually find my album. That was really exciting for me. And that was just a one album deal. And then the thing with Kunal, he and I have actually been in touch since right after Nine Plagues came out. So like 2015. But the timing never worked out. He was either had too much stuff going on to work with me, or I didn't have something ready. So finally happened after all this, was like, hey, I think it's time. And he offered like, let's sign Ashen Horde, let's do this. And so it was exciting. I'm glad to finally be able to work with him. Of course, then COVID hit, but it's great because, you know, Transcending Obscurity has such a reputation. They put out such high quality, and like you said, really interesting stuff. I think he looks for stuff that doesn't sound like everything else.
Yeah.
So it's really exciting to be with a label like that, and such a great reputation. And yeah, no, it's been awesome. I'm really fortunate to be able to work with him.
Okay. Well, Trevor, the sad times arrive at this interview. I hope you enjoyed this one like me. You are a terrific guy. Congratulations for this last album. It's a great one. We did a review on Metallarium. We saw your score.
Thank you.
It's a great score for a progressive metal band. So, well, perhaps we want to add something to your Latin American fans and Metallarium followers.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for everyone for supporting us. If you've just learned about us with this album, if this is the first time you're hearing about it, if you've listened to the old records, it's all awesome. I really appreciate the support. I would love to make it down there one of these days. I've never been to South America at all. It is the one continent I need to get to. So hopefully we can make that happen. I would love to come down.